Okay, great. I think we're going to go ahead and start. Thanks everyone for joining. Today we're going to be reviewing our Latin America capabilities and talking about how we can simplify your needs for LATAM. On the call today, myself, Seema Chiodo, I'm the National Channel Director for Mosaic NetworX. Also have Matt Hiles, he's our founder and COO, a veteran in the industry with over 25 years of experience in the networking space. And then we have our LATAM product specialist, Jerry Belot. I'm gonna say your name wrong, Jeremy. 12 years of carrier services in the Latin America market. With some of the big heavy hitters out there. And so Jeremy is going to be talking about our specific capabilities in the Latin America space. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt Hiles right now to talk just really briefly about Mosaic and then get into the meat of this webinar.
Thank you, Seema. Greetings and good day. I'm Matt Hiles at Mosaic NetworX. And if you haven't worked with Seema in the past on any of your projects, she is absolutely a world-class channel manager, and I highly recommend you reach out to her for support on any of your upcoming network needs. So today is one in the series of our X Factor micro webinars. Today is simplifying Latin America services. The intent of the micro webinars is to provide some useful and usable information in a high impact way in a short period of time, and you can take that information with you and get back at your day. And so with it, we'll get started. So I'd like to take a moment just to share a little bit about the company. Mosaic NetworX, we were founded in 2007 by 3 industry veterans, all who had 20+ years experience in fiber optic infrastructure and networking technology. I was one of those 3 guys. And at the time, we started as a network aggregator. We deployed circuits all over the world, as we continue to do today. We have approximately 400 wholesale buying agreements with carriers globally. There was a pivot in the industry, as we all know now, in 2014, when the promise of SD-WAN hit the marketplace. Mosaic NetworX was early adopters of SD-WAN technology, and in 2015, we settled on the VeloCloud platform, now owned by VMware, and did our first customer deployment in 2016. And so for the last 4 years, we've done a whole depth and breadth of types of SD-WAN deployments integrated with our network services piece. And then more recently, or most recently, we acquired a very acclaimed MSSP headquartered out of the Bay Area with, again, a great depth and breadth of security knowledge. And with that, we've launched our security and professional services capabilities, again, in 2020. So I will turn this piece of the X Factor webinar over to Jeremy. He's our local expert on our capabilities in Latin America. So we'll start it off with Jeremy and the challenges.
Thank you so much, Matt. Pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well and healthy. I'm based in Miami. So I'm going to be talking about the challenges for Latin America. So this is very important because it's really what is impacting the agent community today. So today we can support over 37 countries. So it's very important to explain that from all these 37 countries in LATAM, they all have, or they all are a different world within the region. So from LATAM, we have Mexico, then we have Central America, we have the Caribbean, then we have South America, then within South America, we have very important markets such as Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, obviously the second biggest market in Latin America. They all react different. They all have different pricing models. They all have different infrastructure. So it's really important to see the region has small islands together, you know, and when it comes to having a multinational project, you need to have the right support to have a good understanding of the how each country works. So then we enter into the legacy former state-owned telecoms. You know, many of these countries, they used to, or they still are owned by state governments. You know, for example, Bolivia, you know, you have Ecuador. They are still owned by the local state. So there are not that many offers on those countries, you know, and that results in pricing being higher than other markets within the region. You know, you can see Brazil, which is a country with a lot of offer. Obviously, prices are much lower. But then right next to Brazil, you have a country such as Uruguay that can have very high prices in comparison to Brazil, and they are very right next to each other. So that's something very, very important to consider. Also, you see the monopolistic corporate culture, you know, in regions such as the Caribbean. You know, the Caribbean folks, they protect their markets very well. They keep very few players within the islands, and that allows them to protect their market, and you don't see much price erosion in the Caribbean, and prices are incredibly high. So when you come around to a project where you have to interact with different countries, you know, within the same region, it's very important to understand, you know, the how they all play within each other and how they all connect back to the US. So these countries where you have monopolistic corporate culture or legacy former state-owned, we call those countries premium markets. And it's not because the technology is premium, it's because prices are high. It's very difficult to gather different options. You know, normally you have one or two options to present to your customers. So that's why we call these countries premium. You know, another example is Venezuela. Venezuela is a very unstable country, a lot of social, political, and economic issues. So there are not that many offers in Venezuela. So you see very high prices in those countries, even though it's a very poor country, you know, prices are very high. Then we jump into the infrastructure topic. You know, you have different level of technologies in these countries. You know, you see a lot of SDH services such as E1, SD3, STM4, STM16. You know, those are services that you don't see often in the US. It's rare to see a requirement for a customer asking for SDH, but you see those in Latin America. So it's very important to understand the level of services, the type of technologies that you can offer in each country, that at the end of the day, you can translate and bring back to the US and satisfy the requirement of your customers. So these are all challenges that we see in the region. You know, also you have the currency and language barrier. You know, each country has their own currency. They all have different tax regulations, especially those state-owned countries. So when you add them all, you have like a big complex situation when you have a multinational client asking you for a circuit in Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Venezuela, a couple of islands in the Caribbean, and then you are like, what am I going to do with this? You know, I don't have the confidence to really support these complex projects. You know, it really takes you out of your comfort zone, you know, and then when you see the market and you see your options to who you can rely on, which is the last point, and I think the most important, you see low support, you know, for the agent community, and resulting in all the agents walking away from these massive, incredible opportunities that with the right support and with the right knowledge, you can have an incredible impression to your clients, because it really makes a difference with the rest of the options supporting these customers. So I think now we're going to talk to the good news, you know, the solution, how we can tackle all these different points that we previously mentioned, and how we can make a difference. You know, we're talking about 37 countries that we can support you now with Mosaic. We can help you in all these countries, you know, having a single source of support, technical support, quoting support, whatever you need. Mosaic has the capabilities and the right support to attend these complex projects, you know. Today they rely and have the support, you know, having access to more than 37 countries between Latin America and the Caribbean. That's including from Mexico all the way down to Chile, Argentina, and all the Caribbean islands. We have more than 11 subsea cable systems interconnecting the region. So that's a very important point, because that allows you to have diversity when you want to bring a capacity from either Argentina, Brazil, or Mexico back to the US. It's really important to have diversity on the routes, international routes, coming back to the US. So the fact that you have different subsea cable systems to bring back that capacity back to the US is really important. How we are able to support all these countries, all these different scenarios, well, because we have a comprehensive connectivity API driven. You know, I think this is a very innovative approach within Mosaic with the respective partners, and we're able to consolidate more than 70 different providers from Latin America. Obviously local providers, regional providers, subsea cable providers, and that allowed us to put together more than 200,000 kilometers of terrestrial fiber optic, and that's excluding the subsea cable systems, you know. And when we put that into the APA automation, we have more than 20 million on-net and near-net buildings that we can quote in minutes. So basically, our platform allowed us to provide you pricing on either transport, internet solutions that you may need in these countries within minutes. So when it comes to having an RFP that you need to support, and you have 4 or 10 different locations, one in each country, we have the capability to provide you pricing within minutes. We're not talking about weeks. We're not talking about months, which is the typical scenario with a big carrier local in Latin America. So we basically embedded everything into the same platform, you know, gathering all the KMC files from these providers' network, and that allowed us and give us the knowledge of where the different routes, terrestrial routes, pass through the different countries, and how we can bring that back to the US with different subsea cable systems. So the responsive support that we have very strict SLAs within ourselves. You know, we want to reply pricing within 24 to 48 hours. You know, we want to provide within 72 hours KMC files, diagrams, and any related technical information that the agents need in order to support these complex projects. You know, agent community in the US has very high standards. You know, they have very high expectations. They're used to a fast-paced rhythm, respond quickly to their customers. And then when you have to support projects in Latin America, and unfortunately, you know, the standards in Latin America, they're not like the US. You know, you tend to receive quotes in weeks or maybe months, and that particular provider only specializes in a specific region. But then you have to deal with 2 different slow-moving providers in order to support these projects. So that's not going to be the case with Mosaic. You know, we put together all this knowledge, support, and platforms in order to change and disrupt the expectation of the agents when it comes to Latin American projects. Another important aspect of the solution is the pricing. You know, yes, you're going to give me fast support, all the technical information, but what about pricing? Pricing, we guarantee you that it's going to be the best in the different markets. And what I call and what I say is the biggest advantage of Latin America is the revenues. Revenues in Latin America are incredible. 10 gigs in the US can cost you, or you can sell 10 gigs in the US for $2,000. You can sell 80 megs for $2,000 in Latin America. You can see countries where they're selling a gig for $20,000, even $30,000 for 1 gig. So you're talking about a strategic approach, concentrating in an area that is much attractive, because you can gather more residuals, you're going to sell higher revenues in these regions, you're going to make a bigger impression to your customers, now stepping out of your comfort zone, supporting all these different countries. But we're going to give you the confidence to approach these projects. We're going to give you technical support. We're going to give you all the different options that you may need in order to tackle these projects the best way. So at the end of the day, you don't need to knock on new doors. You don't need to gather new customers or go after a new market segment. This market, the same customers that you're supporting today, they have businesses in Latin America. Most of them, maybe 50%, maybe 40%. But I guarantee you there is a small segment of your customer base that they have businesses in Latin America, and it's just a matter of opening the conversation with them, talking to them about the new possibility to support them, delivering pricing quick, giving them knowledgeable options, and obviously with very good pricing. So this is something great that Mosaic is putting together to tackle the Latin American business. I think there is a massive lack of support to the agent community for these regions. And I'm very confident now with this approach that Mosaic is putting together, the agent community is going to be able to tackle a new segment that probably was not that available to them, with higher revenues, better support, making a difference to their customers, and making a new impact. So that's my input for today. You have the challenges, different scenarios per country, and then you have an incredible solution. When you don't need to talk to different providers, you need to talk to Mosaic on this particular case, and they will support you. Just give them a chance, give them a small project, and then you start growing your different approach with bigger projects. But I invite you to join this approach and take advantage of it, because if you don't, someone else will. So Latin America is not about the biggest eating the small one. It's about the fastest eating the slow one. So I take it back to Matt.
Thanks, Jeremy. I always appreciate hearing your impassioned understanding of the Latin America market and all the great things that we can do down there, especially for the agent community. We're going to move quickly because we committed to finish in 20 minutes, and we want to be on time and under budget. So I pulled up this new illustration here. This kind of captures, in essence, what Jeremy was referring to, as well as Mosaic. We have several hundred wholesale buying agreements with carriers all over the world, so we can clearly simplify the global procurement and administration of these types of networks, and so Latin America is just an area of specialization where we have a unique advantage. So, I'd like to wrap this up. We are Mosaic NetworX is a global network aggregator. We specialize in Latin America with all the great things that Jeremy mentioned. We feel like with that we've cracked the code on LATAM and the complexities that the unique complexities that exist in that marketplace, and we've done that with API-driven location and API-driven pricing, where we can turn that stuff around to you very quickly. Again, reach out to SEMA for your projects. 20 million connected buildings, either on net or near net in Latin America. So there's an incredible marketplace there. And as Jeremy mentioned, most companies or many companies have a presence there and are just looking for coherent ways to deliver services. Again, we have an impressive SLA for quoting and installation. If you have any experience in Latin America, you know it can take weeks for quotes and months for installation, and that's just not our paradigm. And then we take all of that and deliver it in a highly orchestrated, bulletproof customer experience. And that's it. SEMA? I think you may be on mute.
I am. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Matt, for going through and talking about our capabilities in Latin America. I wanted to go ahead and encourage folks to use the question and answer box or the chat box there to any questions. I see some tenured folks on the line that have worked in the Latin America market, and if you have any questions for myself, Matt, or Jeremy, happy to answer those for you guys.
SEMA, would it be feasible just to open up the mic to all the attendees?
You might be able to do that. Let's see if we can, I'd be happy to do that if we can quickly accomplish that.
In the meantime, welcome any questions through the chat box. Got Jeremy here. He is the authoritative source for all things LATAM, so take it while you can get him.
I have a question coming in. What carriers do you work with in Latin America? Is it all of them? Which ones?
Yeah, so basically it is really important to do business with companies that react and move like we are expect them to do. Obviously, we look for small companies in Latin America, local carriers in the different countries, you know, for the local access. If we don't have, it's very important to have the support from the providers that have the synergy with your business model. You know, if you have very strict SLA, you cannot work with a company that will install services in 100 days or 120 days. You need to look for those providers that stick to the same SLA that you have, so you can keep the same level of support across the board, no matter where you're supporting your businesses in the different countries. That's why we have more than 70 providers, obviously all the countries combined. And that's because probably we concentrate on a specific region for one provider, then a small portion of the city in one particular country would use another provider. So then when you combine all these support, you have more than 70 different providers. Instead of having one big carrier supporting you many countries, it's better to have 3 or 4 per country to guarantee the level of support. You know, obviously the small carrier appreciates significantly, you know, when you give them a business, and unfortunately it's not the same than when you go to a big carrier and you ask for a 20 meg. Maybe for them it's nothing, but for the small carrier in this particular country, it's a big deal. So they definitely go for the extra mile. They definitely look to create and leave a good expectation with you and to set the right expectation and deliver good results. So you go back to them and give them more business. So that's the approach. You have to really go into the countries and know the different providers beside the big ones that you are used to hear about, you know, the Telefonicas, the Claro, the Telmex. You know, those are big carriers that are setting low the standards. So you have to go and find the little guys that are making the difference in those countries. So that's crucial in order to be successful in Latin America.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Any other questions? Please bring them forward.
I have a question coming in. From an install perspective, what are you seeing in the market right now as the biggest challenge?
Okay, well, Latin America, you have a lot of, I call them probably out of city requests, you know, probably a company that have factories in the different countries. They may have a factory that is away from the city. You know, those are complex requirements, you know, that requires probably a fiber built into the factory. Those requires a more complex study when it comes to feasibility analysis and putting together the business case to support this level of projects. But other than that, it's just a matter of having the right support when it comes to the different technologies that you can offer in those countries, making sure that if you're looking for a fully transparent services, you don't have any MPLS on any segment of the trajectory of the service. Many providers, for example, let me give you an example. CenturyLink, they call EVPL a transport solution that really goes over MPLS. EPL is a really 100% fully transparent service, and that's a term in Latin America. EVPL, really, the technical definition of EVPL is that it goes into a VLAN, and the EPL goes into a port. But both should be fully transparent services. The only difference is the termination on the endpoint. So these different definitions per provider, you have to be careful, because you may be buying an EPL having the expectation that you're buying a fully transparent services, but at the end of the day, it's really going over MPLS. And if you're looking for a fully transparent services, when your customer goes to use the service, they're going to start running into technical issues because the services is not transparent. So you have to be careful, you know, on the different terminologies per provider, how they call each service, and making sure that you're tackling the right services to support your customer requirement. You know, if it's SDH, if you're looking for DWDM, you know, there are different terminologies in the different countries to approach all these technologies. So I think it's just a matter of gathering the right information from the projects and from the customer in order to really put together the solution that the customer needs. It's really important to do a good analysis of the project, ask as many questions as possible, so you can then deliver the right solution to your customer. Sometimes the customer have a different expectations, and those technologies are not available in one particular country. So you have to come back and propose something similar to their expectation, or that could work on their end.
And Jeremy, if we were just to look back over installations in the last 90 days, I mean, what are we averaging? Is it
our average installations
less than
on 45 days? You know, it depends. If it's a a fully on-net building, we can deliver in 15 days. If we're talking about probably a near net, it can go to 60, 45 days. You know, if it's one of these projects that I mentioned previously, which is a off-city requirement, you can go on 90 days, but definitely never on the 100 days. That's just out of the equation in terms of good service to the customers.
So it sounds like, you know, for all the agents that, you know, they're looking at equal or better installation intervals to what they expect or have seen in the U.S.
100%. And really the difference it's not, okay, you will ask yourself, so what's the difference between, you know, why these big carriers are taking 150 days if it's not that complex to install these solutions? And it's really because these big carriers, they get caught up into very complex business processes within their organization. You know, they need to get an approval. Sales need to get an approval when they submit the service order. Then engineering need to do a feasibility that wasn't done during the pre-sales. Then engineering pass it over to operation. And then when all this chain for one order finish, 45 days went by and the customer is sitting and they haven't started the installation. So the less complex business processes from our end, the fastest we can deliver these services, because we can concentrate 100% in what matters, which is installing the fiber optic if it's required, you know, doing the site survey on the external and internal plant of the building, and then getting in contact with the local guy to, you know, synchronize the configuration of the router. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward. So many of these big carriers spend a lot of time in complex business processes that at the end of the day impact the customer.
Not unlike what we see often with big carriers in North America.
Yeah, it's probably the big carrier disease.
Yeah.
Not against them, you know, I like a lot of them, and they have incredible approach. It's just a matter of growing so much that you can avoid, you know, having these complex business processes. It's just part of being big, you know, being a big company. You know, you need to have a company, you need to have your processes, you know. But when you have a small organization, you know, 100 employees, you can move easy. You know, you don't need to get yourself caught up in these complex processes, and communication within the organization is easier and simpler.
Indeed. Seema, any other questions before we wrap?
No other questions. So I think we're good to wrap it up. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll have our next X Factor webinar coming up on the 23rd. It is going to be talking about Mexico and Brazil. We'll go ahead and get an invite out to everybody, and love to have you back here talking about those two markets.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.